Welcome to our annual Rise India 2021 by Worldline, our annual event. And today we are, going to have a panel discussion on one of the most interesting topics of our times, which is the future of payments. While there has been a gradual shift to digital modes of payment, through the introduction of smartphone-enabled conveniences, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this has accelerated quite a bit. Cash is no longer a king, and we have, and due to the number of restrictions that has been put in place due to the pandemic, and people not accepting money, and then restrictions, everyday behavior of the consumers have also changed, and we are seeing increasing use of digital methods of payment. So we have in our panel eminent members of the industry who will share their perspective on the future of payments. So let me introduce our esteemed panel members. So we have here Mihir Gandhi, who is a partner of the consulting practice of PwC India and leads the payment transformation practice. We have Simone Lavicka, who is the VP Strategy and Business Office at Worldline India. She has a deep work experience in banking and financial services. And we also have Yezdi Lashkari, who is the founder CEO of Flexmoney. Yezdi has 25 years of work experience as entrepreneur, as software executive, and a technology innovator. So without much further ado, I would like to start this discussion. Right? My first question to all the panelists here: what, according to you, are the top 2 payment trends of 2021 which are defining the future of payments? So Simone, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Usha. Let me go first with my thoughts. What we noticed that were some key drivers in our payments industry. So I think we have all seen quite some a change of consumers towards digital payment methods. But because of the pandemic, of the COVID situation, this shift has actually much more accelerated over the last 1.5 to 2 years. So more and more consumers got familiar with cashless payments and digitization because they had to use cashless payments. And the more they got used to it, I think the more this trend will also last. The other part that we have seen is that more and more consumers like to have convenience, choice, and also speed when they shop online and order digitally. So they also look towards cross-border shopping, and given also the globalization that more and more people could afford to travel around the world, and they got familiar with some of the local products. Also, when they returned from their travels, they sometimes wanted to keep on buying some of these local products that they liked a lot. So from that perspective, we have seen much more shift towards digital purchases and online purchases and digital payments, but also towards buying more online, also cross-border.
Right. That was an interesting take, Simona. So, Mihir, would you like to share your thoughts on the 2 payment trends of 2021?
Sure. Thanks, Usha. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for having me here. I agree to what Simona has just articulated in terms of the trends that we have been seeing. I would just like to add a little bit on top of that. I think for sure, consumers going online and transacting online has been the big kind of change that we have seen in 2020, 2021 during the pandemic. And in addition to this, what has also happened is that small and medium businesses, which were traditionally, more physical, not probably accepting digital payments, they were forced to adopt the digital world, and they were forced to go online, set up their own mobile apps or even websites for accepting orders during the pandemic. And they also ensured delivery of these goods or services at the consumer's home. So I think it's been a very rapid shift, not only from the consumer's perspective, but also from a merchant perspective, where the small and medium enterprises have been forced to go online, digital, create their own mobile apps, create their own websites, and start accepting payments online. So I think that's the first trend, which I would say has happened specifically in India. And the second trend is whenever there was an opportunity for consumers to go physical and visit stores, they are insisting on touchless, contactless kind of payment options or methods. So when I say touchless and contactless, it essentially means that I will not touch anything, either a POS device or exchange my currency notes or even do anything through physically. I will want to scan a QR code, or I will want to use my contactless card to just tap from a distance, the POS terminal and fulfill the transaction. So I think that's been a slowly, a slow shift, but a gradual shift. And what we have seen is that both these trends, going online for consumers and merchants, as well as the touchless and contactless, both these trends are here to stay. I don't think consumers are going back, and they don't want to go back to the old ways of payments where you exchange currency notes, try to fish for the right kind of change, or even try and put your PIN at a POS terminal. So if it's below a certain threshold, then yes, the contactless option will still be preferred. So I would say these are the two payment trends that I've seen is dominant in 2020, 2021, and these are specifically from an Indian perspective.
So, that's an interesting take on the small and medium enterprise, which is so true. And I have also seen a number of places where the offline stores are going digital. So while you have a physical, you physically go and buy your stuff, but then all the other payments are being done digitally in the form of QR code or whatever. So of course, that is also another enablement that we are seeing. In this as a future of payment, right? So yes, Yezdi, what do you think apart from what Simona and Mihir has mentioned? Do you have a different take to all this? And what do you believe here to stay?
So first of all, thank you for including in the panel. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that I think Simone and Mihir have articulate a lot of trends that we see in our business actually in the market. I think I'll just sort of put our particular spin on it. So 2021 has clearly been the year of buy now, pay later, right? It is the hottest trend in payments worldwide actually. And at the beginning of this year, we did a strategy session with the leadership team and our investors. We said by the end of this year, buy now, pay later will have arrived. We were off by 6 months. It's here. It's the fastest growing online payment. A number of tailwinds driving it, as Mihir articulated, the pandemic, the explosion of online commerce, and the need for contactless digital. Increasingly, certain transactions that we did with cash are moving into the digital realm. So that's the first big trend we see, and that trend earlier was just focused on a few categories of consumption. It is now spreading to almost any category of consumption. Right, whether it's aspirational purchases such as a mobile phone, a vacation, a new piece of furniture, which you can buy on EMI or installments, or necessities, what I call essentials, medicines, groceries, etc. So that's one big trend we see. We're in the thick of it, and literally every bank CEO we talk to, the top two priorities are digital and buy now, pay later on the retail side. Excuse me. The second trend sort of is a confluence of trends that we've articulated by Mihir and Simone, but we think the implication is profound, and we're seeing the beginning of this, and I think it's still got to play out in the market. And I think again, this is a worldwide trend. So I think we're seeing a fundamental shift in the payment or retail credit model from an issuer-led model, where a bank or a lender gave you a card or an instrument, to a model where the merchant, it's a commerce embedded purchase, so in the journey. So the merchant actually controls the experience, controls what financing methods you can get. It is, and in increasingly larger merchants and big tech players actually not only control the experience, they control which lenders' instruments will even show up to their customer, right? So we're seeing a fundamental shift in the model of payments, and we call it purchase finance, from sort of an issuer or a bank-led model to a commerce embedded model, and along that and further along that path to an on-demand app model, where UPI is a classic example of this trend, where, I mean, I'm assuming everyone on this call is familiar with UPI in the Indian market. Of the top 5 UPI apps, right, there's only one bank app which has less than 1% of all the volume of transactions, right? All the UPI apps today are third-party apps. They are consumer-facing brands, whether that's Google, PhonePe, etc. And fundamentally, what that means is that if I have an account with HDFC or Axis, it doesn't matter. I don't need their apps. As a consumer, I can go to the brand that gives me the best experience to pay. That's a fundamental shift. We take it for granted after a few years of UPI, but just think about the 2 decades or 3 decades before of going to a bank for a loan or a card or a bank account. That has shifted. So we see that continuing actually in the market.
Right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on this, Yezdi. So yeah, these have given us the thoughts on where the future of payments are headed. One is a cross-border payment, as Mana mentioned, and the small and medium enterprise going, they opting for their own apps or websites, and the BNPL. These are buy now, pay later. These are the few definitely the trends that we will see moving forward. So the other thing that we see is the mobile devices which have become much more powerful, because obviously you can practically do everything. You can watch any movie that you want. You can book a table at a restaurant. You can go shopping. You have your wallet enabled services. So your mobile devices does definitely this helps you to do a lot of things without you actually logging into a laptop or a PC, right? So how do you think the mobile commerce will shape the industry, and it will help to getting more and more people into the digital payment sphere? So Mihir, do you want to articulate your thoughts on that?
Sure. So from a mobile commerce perspective, I mean, we're already seeing the shift happening, where, as I mentioned earlier, that merchants are going online and they are trying to have their own apps or even their own web stores, so as to speak, to accept digital payments. I think that will continue, and people will feel more comfortable to shop online for almost everything, buy things online, buy services online. So that is going to continue. The other thing that I see happening, maybe not immediately, but in the future, is how does social combined with mobile commerce to allow one to place an order easily or to do a recurring transaction very, very easily through your social platform. So be it a WhatsApp or be it Instagram. How can I? And it is already happening in some sense, like especially on Instagram, you can see a lot of this shopping options where I can click and it takes me to a web page which is within Instagram itself, but I can do my shopping, I can check out, and I can also pay. So everything happens on the same social app. I don't need to traverse to another app outside. So I think the combination of social with mobile commerce is going to happen very, very fast, and that's where I will not have to potentially go to 10 different apps or 10 different merchant kind of websites. I could potentially go to one website, which is Instagram or a WhatsApp, and I can do the shopping by selecting, and those ads keep on popping up based on my customized kind of preferences. So I think that is going to be the next big kind of driver, of shopping or mobile commerce in that sense. The other point that we need to consider is, again, on the security side, where we see some challenges still coming up on the mobile commerce where, security still needs to be strengthened. There are a lot of these links, and I won't go too much into it, but I think security as a key parameter is important for mobile commerce to proliferate and flourish going forward. How do we further strengthen it? How do we make it more seamless? How do we improve the overall experience of the customer is going to, be important. So I would say social combined with mobile commerce is going to be a big game changer. It's already happening in some sense, but I think it has to further kind of proliferate. And with more and more people getting smartphones in the country, I think it is well poised. So it is going to happen 3 to 5 years down the line, but it is in that direction. The second aspect is on the security of how we kind of make it more stronger and tighten it further to enable customer confidence to transact on the mobile websites. So that would be my take on it.
Absolutely, the security and trust is probably high up on everyone's thoughts when they use any mobile app for any transactions. So you're actually absolutely right in bringing up the topic on security. So Yezdi, what would you think is your thoughts on the mobile commerce as we see? Do you think of anything additional that would happen in terms of ease of use or adoption or distribution for that matter? What do you think about that?
I fundamentally believe that the future of payments is going to be mobile first, user centric, right? Today already, as you said, we're going cashless in India with UPI. It's all app-based payments, whether it's P2P or P2M. And that habit has been formed. There are about 500 million smartphones in India, 200 million digital payment users already, right? But today, as we have basically just taken the web experience, put it into a nicer app, and carry it with you on your mobile phone. We're using, in my opinion, only about 5% of the capabilities of this device that we're carrying in the pocket. For example, while we focus on the transaction, if you look at some of sort of the better consumer-facing apps, whether it's the BNPL players globally, some of the UPI apps in India, a lot of what mobile can do is make the pre-purchase, whether it's through social, whether it's through my location, whether it's through recommendations based on my purchase history in the app, much, much better in terms of discovery, right? As the amount of options proliferate for the consumer, discovery becomes actually the battleground, not payments. That is gets solved. So I think the mobile phone, I'll give you an example of what I'm pushing my team to do in the next 12 months, right? I want any of my users to have a sort of a Flexmoney enabled app from one of our lending partners on their phone and basically walk into a mall and say, I'm here, what offers are available for me, right? Go to the store, click a product QR code and get details and pay right there and then, walk to the checkout, simply allow the cashier to scan the QR code generated and walk out the door, right? No touch, no hassle, no fuss, right? Today, all those pieces exist in different places, but the mobile phone pulls them together, right? So that's the first piece. Now, on top of that, today, again, we still use PIN codes and OTPs for security, right? For transaction, because the problem is that the acceptance infrastructure is so out of date that we kind of have to go with the backend legacy, whether it's a card system, whether it's, biometric based authorization, facial recognition, all of these things are already built into most mobile phones, right? Voice-based authentication. So I think that the experience will get a lot more fluid for the customer and with high security over time, right? So I think it will be literally you biometric, you unlock your app, you tap, you get information about the product you want to buy, see all the offers available in a user-centric manner for you. Pick one, pay, generate a code, walk to the checkout, cashier scans it, you walk out. Don't have to deal with a salesperson, don't have to deal with going through reams of, and all these pieces exist in isolation today. whoever pulls this together in a user-centric experience is going to win the customer. So that's on the issuance side, right? They'll reimagine the payment instrument. Acceptance side, I think Mihir has covered some of it, right? The digitization of kiranas and MSMEs, right? Where the smartphone acts as the acceptance terminal. You can tap and pay using a card. You can scan and pay, generate a dynamic QR code. And in there is their inventory management, their CRM, etc. So they can dynamically personalize the price to you as you walk into the store, right? So I think both of these, we are seeing the beginnings of these journeys. A lot of players in the market digitizing the SME, offering sort of compelling payment experiences to the consumer. But we're not seeing yet a holistic piece because the information exists in many, many different databases, right? But ultimately, just like Google, reduced the entire internet to one little search box, right? Whoever does that, I stress, in a user-centric manner, is going to win the game, right? And maybe multiple players doing in different places. Today, the problem with payments is it's all product-centric. You go get a card, you go get a loan, you go get this. It's not user-centric. As a user, I have to do all the work. So we see the mobile phone being the key platform that can pull a lot of this together and make a delightful experience, both pre-purchase and post-purchase. And I'll just give you one more example. I know that I may be rambling on a bit, but I'm talking as a consumer now, not as an entrepreneur, right? One of the things that always bugs me about my payment instruments, or I have multiple cards and all that, is that the statement after I swipe all over, but I can rack up a large bill, and I don't even know, because while I'm swiping, there's no interface for me as a customer to know, have I exceeded my monthly budget, etc. So anyone who can build that pre-purchase and that post-purchase experience, where the consumer can even look and say, should I make this purchase now? Or maybe I wait till the first of the month, right? I'm talking about an extreme case here. I think that is where the future, that's what a mobile phone will enable. Because it's with you when you are actually making the purchase.
That's quite an exciting insight, Yezdi. Actually, not many people would have thought in those terms, and quite futuristic as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody would want this kind of uses and experiences using their mobile phones, and I'm sure that's where the future of payment also is leading, and we are seeing in various ways, as we spoke for so long. So I would want to ask Simone, what do you believe from a global perspective, where the mobile commerce will shape the industry from a global perspective?
Yes, thank you for asking. I actually very much are in sync with what Yezdi and Mihir were saying, because I think if we look at the users of mobile phones, we see, especially the younger generations, if we look at the millennials or the Gen Z, they're so much used to using the mobile phone for each and everything. I think a recent study said that those type of generations spend on average minimum 4 hours on the mobile phone. And so it becomes really a part of the social life as well. And when we look at the payment evolution, we saw a lot of card payments when we look some years ago, but now looking towards the unbanked or underserved, they often don't have access to bank accounts and to cards, but actually they have access to mobile phones. So that's why we believe there has been quite a leap forward to target those type of customers that don't have otherwise access to payments or to accounts. So from this perspective, I believe, as both my colleagues on the panel were saying, there's a lot of innovation that will be still driven out of the mobile first experience of bringing together the social part, embedding it with payments, but also with more additional financial services and applications. Because in the end, the user experience will be a driving force in adopting also those payment types. And most successful will be the ones who can offer that embedded frictionless checkout experience, but also are able to connect the dots when it comes to data and information and identify loyal customers and bringing together all these data points and information.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. Actually, millennials spend quite a lot of time on their mobile phones and the social apps. So if we put it all together, as Mihir said, that we need to where you can have a social, and mobile commerce, which is picking up pace. So all this kind of adds up, which direction the mobile commerce is heading. So that's an interesting take, of where the payments as a payments.
May I add one? Sorry, Usha, finish it. I just want to add a thought based on what you and Simone just said, but please finish. Sorry.
Yeah, you can speak.
I just want to add one thing that I should have mentioned. The other thing about the mobile that's fundamental, I've seen this with my dad, is for people who are not used to a lot of point and clicking interfaces, right? Mm-hmm. People who are not natively digital or whose language is not the language of the interface, which still is primarily English for a lot of websites and checkout experiences. The mobile provides a different medium, right? Whether it's a touch and expand for visually impaired or even voice-based. So increasingly, we're seeing an inclusion of people. It's not just whether you have a card or not. The mobile checkout is easier because you can do voice. You can do photo, which is a language barrier that a lot of people have, for example. And even older people like my dad, for example, while he's fluent in English, his eyes cannot handle the small type, but he can speak to the interface. So I think that's something we shouldn't because we are very comfortable with this, but a lot of the world and the population doesn't have that language, has a language barrier or maybe a sight barrier, for example.
Absolutely, which is so true. I mean, we see it, everywhere. One is English is not the first language for most people. So obviously, it becomes a barrier. But as you said, the voice, voice-based authentication, and when they speak, that's so much more, makes them more comfortable using the app and the device. So of course, while we spoke about the payment trends and we spoke about mobile commerce, I mean, in today's day and age, there is something that we definitely have to talk about is the blockchain technology and open banking networks. I mean, that's probably the buzzword that is happening. So. What are the best use cases for these concepts today, and how can they evolve in the future in the payment space? So, Yezdi, do you want to start up your thoughts on this?
Thanks. Actually, so I make it a point, if I don't know anything about the topic, not to talk about it. I'm not an expert on blockchain. I'm sort of a casual understanding. In terms of open banking, India has just launched the account aggregator framework, which is sort of our open banking infrastructure. I think that's tremendously exciting. Though if you actually look at the details of the architecture, it's sort of fairly complex set of entities that have to orchestrate this. So I think it'll take a few years to work itself out, get the ecosystem out, but it's a fantastic move forward in terms of financial inclusion, the ability to offer sachet-sized payment options to a lot more of the population than you could earlier. But in terms of blockchain, unfortunately, I'm not an expert, so I will refrain I'll let the experts speak up on this.
Great. Yeah, I mean, on this, open banking framework and banking being the aggregator, that's also is something that we are seeing, taking off slowly. It is taking its time, but then I'm sure, in the coming years, that is where it is heading. So yeah, Mihir, do you want to talk about blockchain as a technology in the digital payment space?
Sure. So I'll just talk about open banking first and then probably cover blockchain. So from an open banking perspective, I agree with what Yezdi said in terms of the account aggregator model and how that may change the way, we open an account or we validate transactions or we get a loan, etc., from different financial institutions. So I agree it's a step in the right direction, and there are multiple use cases that can be enabled through that framework. So as I mentioned, the first is opening a bank account or any account, so how do you validate yourself? How do you give permission to another organization to use a KYC which is housed by, a third party? So maybe that is something which will really change the way, and I don't have to provide as a customer a KYC document every time I actually, want to open an account or open, a banking product. The second is credit, and maybe Yezdi can relate to this also, in terms of how do you enable credit by maybe the customer is not fully banked or doesn't have a CIBIL score. Then how do you enable credit through open banking or account aggregator? So the way to do it is, there is alternate credit data that may be available by one provider, and if that is made available to other participants, then that can serve as a very powerful way of enabling credit to the financially excluded or not fully included population of India today. So I think that is going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. So these are the two primary use cases I believe open banking or account aggregator model in India would enable. From a blockchain perspective, again, I'm not again an expert on blockchain from a technical perspective, but there are a few use cases that do come to my mind. They have been tried and tested in India, but we've still got to find a scale to kind of pick it up. The first is on the remittance side, specifically the cross-border remittances of how that has enabled. There have been many pilots that have been undertaken in India, from UAE to India, from Europe to India, etc., Australia to India. But we have not seen that scale or that rapid movement forward. So maybe that is something to ask ourselves of what exactly is stopping us. Is it the regulations? Is it the adoption from banks partners, or is it the general customer awareness and their comfort to use this, right? That is the first use case. The second use case is more on a new thing that is going to come up, which is the central bank digital currency. Some of it can be based on blockchain technology, some of it may not be. So what does CBDC mean? It is basically, instead of the physical currency notes and coins, the central bank of the country will actually enable digital money to be issued to the citizens and to the through the banks or directly by themselves. And that again can be based on blockchain as a technology, or it can be based on other technologies which can be centralized technologies. So that could potentially be another use case, and we have seen a lot of discussions by different government entities, RBI folks, to see how CBDC pilots can be enabled in India and then rolled out, which will be parallel to the physical currency and notes. And you can enable traceability of the central bank digital currency through the blockchain technology. So I think these are the two use cases in India that come to my mind. Other than non-financial, blockchain can be used in other things like property and land records, validation of different documents, etc. But I just thought I'd restrict it to financial services since we are talking about that.
That's quite an interesting take on the blockchain. I mean, these use cases, I'm sure, going forward, that would probably be the way it'll go. So, what do you think, Simona? Would your thoughts on both the blockchain as a technology and the open banking? Do you have your thoughts? What are your thoughts on those?
Yes. So let me first start off with the blockchain technology topic. Similar to what Mihir was saying, I think it still takes some time for the adoption to see it back in payments. I think where we will first see it a bit is more on the sourcing part, because I think there's a strong focus also for local governments to ensure transparency of where certain payments or certain goods and services are coming from, and to have a proper audit trail. This is also being stimulated when it comes to anti-money laundering, fraud prevention and risk management. So I would imagine that there's more room for innovation using blockchain technology in that aspect. And maybe we can also see it in the future when it comes to smart contracts, again, working with partners and supply chains. I believe that blockchain technology has a real advantage of identifying where certain goods and services come from. If you have a contract and want to change payment terms or other terms and conditions, then this is a good way to track it in a transparent way. So I think there's more room that we will see on that part. But currently, I do have to say we see it to a lesser extent on the payment side at the moment. When it comes to open banking, I would say the benefits we see, especially in Europe, and I think more and more countries will follow suit on this, is that markets that are still card dominated see this now as a very good alternative for people that don't have access to cards, but also as a cheaper means of payments. And what I think will drive the user adoption is really the aspect of instant notification. This is also what merchants appreciate a lot. If a consumer buys something and pays, then they can get in an instant moment, within seconds, the confirmation that the payment was made. And I think this will also drive more use cases like person-to-person payments, where you just want to send some money to a friend, or if people sell in the circular economy some of the second-hand goods, this is also a good way to just make sure that the purchase happen, and so you can have an immediate exchange of goods or services. So this is something we are actually experiencing, at least in the European market, and we believe that more markets will follow this.
Great. Thank you for your thoughts on this. So I have this one question. As we have seen, there are a number of payment modes now, and people have the flexibility to use whatever payment mode that they want. And we're seeing more and more people, at least in India, using UPI. So what do you think is the future of these kind of payment modes going forward? Because, the pandemic has really clearly, at least in an economy in Asia, where cash is the king, where people use more of cash. We have seen the shift. So these forms of payment, the digital forms of payment, where do you think, what would prevail over a period of time? So, Simone, you want to?
Yes, maybe I can go first on my thoughts. So I think the digitization trend will continue. And we see that there will be a much greater shift away from card payments to a lot more alternative payment methods or local payment methods. And also what we see with the card rails like Visa or MasterCard, also they are working heavily on tokenization of their cards. So I think the future will really be much more digital, less cards driven, and a lot of new payment methods might evolve over that, all driven by the convenience and adoption of the consumer. So the ease of how they can make the payment, how they can purchase certain goods and services will determine what is successful and what not. But this needs to be balanced, as the other panelists were saying previously, with the element of ensuring the right security. So convenience, but also when it comes to payments and feeling secure, I think this will determine the way forward. But digitization is still there and will be the driving force, I believe.
So true, absolutely. So Mihir, your thoughts on this?
So as I look back at what has happened in the last 10 years in India, I think setting up of the central payments operator, the NPCI, was a step in the right direction. And I think that has spurred a lot of focus, a lot of innovation on digital payments, enabling that and promoting the adoption of that. So they have done a fantastic job in enabling the right kind of products ensuring that they started with RuPay, and then there was IMPS, there was Bharat Bill payment system, and other kind of payment products. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a different payment mechanism for different use case. So in my view, based on the use case, the payment mechanism, the payment instrument, the payment acceptance point would change. I'll give you examples, and I agree with what Simone also said, that it will move from card away from cards to cardless for some payment options or some use cases, but it will still be cards for some of the other payment options. So for example, if you look at transit, right, where you're talking about so many new metros coming up in India, I think the future is going to be a tap and pay, right, where I just tap on gate the gate opens, I go in, and then I tap out, and the fare gets debited from the purse which sits on the card. It could also be a QR code, but it's a much more complex process of that. But for other payment options, like for example, if I want to pay my bills, I will still be using a mobile app or a QR code if I want to go through that. So the point is that different use cases will see different payment instruments being used. We are also hearing about, if you take a longer term view, there can be smart payments in the form of what is happening in the US, where Amazon has those Amazon Go stores where I can walk in, pick up different products, and then I just walk out, and the amount is debited from my wallet, Amazon Pay wallet, which exists. So it's basically IoT, Internet of Thing enabled payments, where I can just walk in, pick up whatever I want, and then walk out of the store. So that could be, if you take a longer term view, one of the payment methods or options that may come up in India. The other thing that I believe will happen in going forward is digitization of payments, even in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, with a huge focus in India on financial inclusion, and we've seen some of the success in the last few years. But I still believe we are a long way off. And with the thrust of some of these payment players, of banks, and also of the regulators and central bodies, I feel that the next big shift in digital payments or digitization will happen in these areas. Because if you look at it, metros, tier 1 are already oversaturated from an acceptance perspective. People like you and me who stay in metros or tier 1 locations are already aware of using a UPI or a card or other kind of payment options. But it is the other side of the Indian population that needs to adopt these payment instruments, both from an issuing and acceptance perspective, to see that shift. Today we are at 30% of all transactions in the country happening through digital payments. Can we move the needle? Yes. Maybe it will be 40%, 50% over the next 5, 7, 8, 9 years. But can we move it to 100% like some European countries have done? The answer is no, because India is still a cash economy. It will continue to be a cash dominated economy. Maybe it will be 50-50 or maybe 60-40, whichever way the pendulum swings. But I think it will still be, a mix of what we need to do now and what we need to do going forward to ensure that digitization reaches the other parts or masses of segment that still hasn't seen that. So that's my take on that. I think long term there can be two scenarios playing out. One is for the metro and rural urban locations. It will be new technologies like IoT coming in, and from a rural perspective or a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 perspective, that these digital payments will be adopted, used at those locations, and that will really drive the digitization wave. And there are different technologies that are available or being talked about, like offline payments. If a feature phone or a smartphone, or if a feature phone is converted to a smartphone in these rural locations, then that would really spur the growth. Some of the telcos are planning on doing that, introducing low-cost smartphones. And if that is enabled with the right data, internet connectivity, I think it can be a game changer. So that's my view.
Absolutely. That's I'm sure your thoughts on the rural especially tier 3, tier 4 cities moving towards the digital payment. As actually that's where we see a lot of adoption as well. these digital modes of payments, and absolutely right. We would definitely see this happening in the coming years. So one last question quickly to you, Yezdi, is that what is your one single prediction for payments by 2030?
Okay, so first of all, I should say that I actually agree with what Simone and Ray said in terms of the macro view they've articulated. I look at it more from a user-centric and a technology view, right? And 10 years is an eternity in technology, given the rate of change, right? UPI itself is only 5 or 6 years old, and we can't imagine a world before that. I think now I'm looking at from a user, what I would like, what I expect, what I think will happen is that I think payments for the consumer, and I'm talking more as a consumer as opposed to an SME. I'm sure just because that's my familiarity. I think for payments to the consumer, the winners in payments to the consumer will look very different from the players who are winners today. Let me explain what I mean by that. I think the people who will capture the consumer for the purpose of payments will be players who can pull together all these pieces that we're talking about in a very, very simple experience. That's the first thing, right? And payments, and again, I'm speaking less about P2P. Of course, that's critical, but we have a lot of, I would say, fairly good experiences. Simone talked about some of the stuff with open banking. But so I'm talking about paying for stuff, right? Whether it's bills, whether it's like a service or a product, right? I think whoever can pull that together in terms of both the pre-purchase journey, the discovery that we talked about, whether it's social, whether it's physical world, and who can provide a phenomenal post-purchase experience that's centered towards me, the customer, right? Helping me understand my purchase patterns, helping me understand budgeting, all in a very simple way. That's the first, I think that's where 10 years from now, we'll take it for granted, it'll happen. Second thing I think will happen is that payments will be invisible. If you'll interact, you'll make payments. Today, you already make it through your smartphone, your Apple Watch, tap and pay, multiple modes. It will be with NFC, with IoT, with, God knows what new technology will come in 10 years. It will be invisible, right? It'll be biometric enabled. It will be embedded in the infrastructure, right? So you don't have to take out your phone or your card. It will be like keyless entry. You just walk past, right? And it'll happen, right? And it'll be, and it'll be still highly secure. Facial recognition will verify it's you, etc., etc. The third thing, and this is where I think I have a slightly different perspective, maybe from Mihir, right, is that there are different channels and rails. Today, as we said, cards is the dominant rail. It is going to internet, alternate rails. In India itself, the RBI, the regulators, proposed multiple systems like UPI called NUEs, so multiple rails. There's a bill payments rail, for example. I think that while there'll be multiple rails, from the consumer perspective, again, the winning experience will be rail agnostic. I shouldn't have to know that this merchant accepts card and this merchant accepts Y and this merchant accepts Z. I really don't care as a consumer, honestly, how all the plumbing is wired, right? So whoever can give me an experience where that is just invisible, right? Today, when I go to check out, I have to go to net banking. Okay, I remember net banking or wallet or card or BNPL or God knows what else, UPI. As Mihir said, we have 5-7 different ways. It's a cognitive overload, but I have no choice. That's what I mean. The entities that solve that problem, make it seamless, highly secure, frictionless, but make sure the customer doesn't overspend. Those will win. And these are experiences. The plumbing exists and we'll keep it in. It is experiences that will dominate in terms of, in my opinion, right? And so I think payments and experience 2030 from now will look so different from what 2010 looked from now for us today. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It definitely will look different, and I'm sure we all need to be prepared, to access these new future modes of payment as well. So with this, I would like to thank all our panelists for giving your thoughts on this. It has been an engaging conversation, and there is a lot of takeaways from this session. I'm sure each one of us have a lot of takeaways, and I'm sure the audience also will learn quite a few things. The invisible payment that Yezdi was talking about. It is something that it doesn't occur to us, but when we hear about it, we say, oh yeah, that's the way of, that's the way forward. So yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts on the future of payment, and we appreciate your participation in this. Thank you very much.